Everyone has barriers to mental strength, and it's impacting your personal and professional success. What are barriers? We often think of barriers as like external things. Oh, my kids don't let me do this. My husband doesn't make enough money. I don't make enough money. I don't have enough resources. These things have happened to me, right? External. But I am here to tell you that probably over 90% of the barriers to your personal and professional success are within. And I say that with confidence of myself and knowing what I've had to personally overcome and continue to struggle through and fight through, right? Mental strength is more than just pushing through. It's actual resiliency. And sometimes we have to look back and kind of either treat those things, let those things go in order to move forward. Do you know what's holding you back? It's likely not one thing. It's likely patterns that have how you have responded in your life to the things that have happened to you. And some of these things are conscious, right? I can give you an example of my conscious ones, probably not my unconscious ones, right? But I continued to try to bring those to the surface. And so, for example, New Year's came, and I always think about my weight, my health around New Year's, and I think so many people do, right? And this year I sat down and I was like, what are the patterns? I join a gym for a couple months. I do, a diet for a couple months, lose 10 pounds, and then slowly gain that back. And I'm the 10-pound up and downer my entire life. And, that is now a conscious pattern. But how do you acknowledge or figure out the unconscious patterns? I'm able to do that with what we call the thought map. And in a thought map, you take a problem, a thought, a feeling, and we do just that. We map it out. And we say, what makes us feel like this right now? What has made me feel like this in the past? What made me feel like this in my childhood? And how does this impact my spiritual relationship? Why is this important? It's important because in something as simple as my food choices and my up and down weight, this was a pattern, since probably preteen. And it started with believing that I was fat, someone telling me that I was fat, right? And so that began this kind of negative self-talk, right? And what you believe begins to manifest inside of you, right? And so seeing those patterns. But what about in your professional life, right? What are barriers in your professional life? One of the things, I will do when I'm currently an entrepreneur, I've built this multi-million-dollar clinic, and something will come up. It is typically a complaint from an employee that drives kind of this negative energy inside of me. So I can do a thought map on that, right? What's this energy? It's, anxiety. What's made me feel like this in the past? What made me feel like this in my childhood? And I can tell you just verbally what would come up for me. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. No matter how much I do, I'm not enough, right? And that is an employee issue that you would think doesn't have a personal connection, but it does. And anytime, the energy wells up inside of you, that is something that is a barrier. It's impeding your decision. It's impacting your stress level. How many entrepreneurs, business people, managers, or even employees are overwhelmed and stressed. And maybe, it is not the right working environment for you. However, more likely than not, it is internal. It is what are the patterns of how you typically respond. So as I'm able to bring those unconscious things to the surface with a thought map, I can decide, okay, I know what this is. And some of those are my core connections of I'm not enough, right? If you know my story, I truly fought for my son's life for 15 years, taking him to doctors all over the world, truly believed that I would be able to find healing and treatment for him. And he died in 2016. So that really fed into I'm not enough. Like, I'm not good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I did not do enough, right? And so it wasn't just childhood things. It was real life things that have happened. And, but that is a core connection that I'm continuing to work on. And then I'm able to, once I bring that to consciousness, I'm able to separate it. And I'm able to say, okay, what can I do to, solve this problem that the person is complaining about, right? Can it be solved? Will there always be criticism, right? And so allowing criticism to push all of these internal buttons of I'm not enough increases the stress level of a simple, straightforward complaint that could be resolved. You see where the stress is coming from and how those things are a barrier to your ultimate success, both in your physical health, mental health, and, if you are in a professional situation. So when we think about barriers, I gave an example here of kind of negative thoughts and some of my core buttons, core connections, buttons, these internal things that I react to, right? But also some things that happen to us, and let's talk about grief and trauma. They actually change our chemistry, change our energy. Grief is a very heavy thing and decreases our energy, vibration, however you want to use those words, right? And we need time to heal that and to process that. And so I talk about in the Mentally Strong Method that grief needs to be processed and that relationship cherished. Trauma, we know from all of the research, trauma actually changes brain chemistry, brain neurowiring based on the type of trauma, the length of trauma. It changes your brain. So I told you a little bit about my son and fighting for his life for all of these years. There was tons of micro trauma. Every time my son had a seizure was micro trauma. But there were times where he was in the ICU, thought he was going to die. There were times where there was a seizure so intense it would break a bone. That's trauma. And all of those things changed the wiring in my brain, the neurochemistry in my brain, and how I respond. And so being able to process and let some of those things go, acknowledge how they're still impacting your psyche, right? I talked about not being enough. So I could process my trauma and get to a point where I really feel like I've emotionally disconnected and released that trauma. But I also have to acknowledge what it did to my psyche, the way I think about myself. And so these are all barriers to your personal mental strength. And so we often think about mental strength like we think about physical strength. Like it's discipline and it's willpower and it's pushing through and just keep going. But also like mental strength is like physical strength in that you need to rest in between that growth. You do need to exercise, but oftentimes I find that people either are pushing it away and not processing whatever things are impacting, whatever barriers they personally have, or they're ruminating on them and wasting tons of energy on these barriers. So I want you to learn how to do 3 things. And this is what the Mentally Strong Method is all about. Like it goes into detail of a formula to be able to do this. But even just right where you are right now, if you could think through your problems, remember, bring things to consciousness, think through them, not ruminate on them. Because this is, again, often what happens. Rumination is when you are overthinking and kind of spiraling. And kind of, if you think about a fire and you're trying to put out that fire, and ruminating would be like throwing gas on the fire, right? Thinking through that would be, slowly putting sand on it and decreasing its intensity over time. So learn how to think through your problems and bring whatever negative energy to consciousness, okay? Because we all feel it differently. Some people say depression, some people say anxiety, some people say stress, overwhelmed. It's an energy that you feel inside of you that wells up. Learn to think through that and bring the cause to consciousness, and then organize it. I would like you to be able to separate things. We often enmesh everything together, and then we read a self-help book that says, if you just think positive, all these positive things will happen. And there is some truth to that for your negative self-talk. But it doesn't help every area of your brain, every problem. So learning how to organize things and finding things that actually help decrease how that's impacting your life. So that the third thing is being able to make choices in line with what you really want. Okay? We often talk about, discipline and willpower. And, if you just make a choice and stick with it, you will be successful. And for some things, that is true in the short term. But to continue to grow in your mental strength, you will need to identify those barriers and work through those. So the 3 things are: think through your problems, organize them so that you can make choices in line with what you want. I'm Christy Bundakumara. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 20 years of clinical experience. I have tons of free content here on YouTube on how to overcome these barriers to mental strength, including some intense stuff around grief and trauma. So subscribe, follow, share with people you know could benefit from this.